Hi, my name's Salvatore Sorce. I'm one of the voice and accent coaches here at the London School of English. Today, we're going to be talking about Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation into English pronunciation. There's a couple of things that we're going to look at, some key changes that may be happening here. So let's have a look at what we're going to be focusing on today. The Brazilian R into the English R sound. We'll look at the Brazilian L sound in a final position in the word into an English, what we call dark L sound. We'll also look at the Brazilian Z sound and the English Z sound and see the changes that happen there. And also watching out for final sounds in the word, actually looking at those consonants and what is the quality of those consonants, so we are allowing for greater clarity. Let me be clear from the onset that we are not, or I am not, saying for 1 second that anything that you're doing as far as your pronunciation right now is wrong. No, not at all. Or that English pronunciation is right. It's not necessarily right all the time. What we're doing is showing what you're doing, what we do, and create a bridge between the two to help you create greater clarity within spoken English pronunciation. Okay, so that's all we're doing here. Let's look then at the first point that we're looking at, which is the Brazilian R. Okay, so the Brazilian R has a certain lighter quality to it than the English R. If you think, if I'm using words like rules, revenue, or real estate, then what we're looking at here is a very clear r sound. Sometimes with certain Brazilian, I won't say all Brazilian Portuguese, but certain areas may have a softer R sound, so it could be rules, revenue, real estate. So it's much more aspirated than the R that we use here, which really does focus on a combination of two things happening within the mouth to create a specific sound. So let's break those two things down and make them a little bit clearer for you. So what I'd like to do is just clarify what's going on with the tongue first, and then literally look at what's going on, how the lips inform the sound that little bit further. So I'm going to take my tongue out of the mouth for the moment. You're not going to do this, you're not going to be speaking like this, but it's just really about just showing you what really is happening as far as the movement or position of the tongue. So I'm going to take the tongue out. So as you can see, my tongue is basically doing this. Now, where do we do this in the mouth is now how I'm going to show you how to get there. Place the tip of your tongue against the back of the top front teeth. Trace the tip of the tongue past this stony bit just above the front teeth on the gum, and it's quite stony, rocky. That's the alveolar ridge. Take it back a little bit further and it becomes just a little bit smooth, which is what we call the post-alveolar ridge, before it goes into this big dome in the mouth. You can feel it, it literally goes, whoa! And that's called the hard palate. We're not going that far. We're literally, go back to that smooth place before you go into that big dome. That's the post-alveolar ridge. And you're going to bring your tongue there. And you're going to drop it slightly so it's not actually touching. And all you're doing is just curl and release. I'll do it from the front. And I'll do it from the side. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. That's all you're doing. You're releasing the tongue forward. At the same time, you're making a little bit of noise, like a little dog that's growling. Now, if that's all I was doing, my R would not be clear. So the second part of the making the R sound is actually how the lips get involved. So here we're looking at just a slight bringing together of the corners of the mouth and then release. So when I put the two things together, r, you can see I'm making the little dog sound, the tongue is flicking through, and the lips are releasing as the tongue flicks through. Rules, revenue, real estate, red. Okay, so that's the R sound that we use within the English pronunciation. Let's move on to the L sound, which I know that the L sound at the beginning of a word you do perfectly. Yeah, light, lovely, lose, all those sounds are very, very clear. It's just at the end of a word where we start seeing that the L can turn into a W potential. So if I'm looking at the L sound, if I'm going to just give you the example of what you may do, you might say, if the word, how we would say legal, you might say legal, legal. For the word call, call, you might say call. For the word financial, you might say financial, 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 with no L quality into that. So how we actually use this L, we have to create this L slightly differently from the front L, which is called the light L. L, L, L. We're not doing that. We're using a different quality. And it means just making a little bit more thought into the L sound at the end of the word. So to make this L sound, bring the back of the tongue up against the soft palate. Say the word sing. You'll notice that the tip of your tongue is behind your bottom teeth. Do it again. Sing, sing. Now bring the tongue tip here from behind the bottom teeth up to behind the top teeth. Single, 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 all, all. So you're creating like a hammock or a banana in the mouth. Back is up, the tip is up. So the words again that we're using here are legal. Can you see how that happens now? Legal. That's actually quite an easy one to do. Call. That's probably a little bit more challenging, but it's kind of got the back of the tongue working and the front of the tongue going up as well. Call. And the last one, financial. Financial. All. Financial. Okay? So that's the changes that you may make within the L sound. One of the ones that I've heard very recently is the Brazilian Z sound and how that can change into an S, particularly at the end of words. It has a slight stronger quality at the beginning, but just be careful. So in terms of how we would use the Z, we make sure that tone or the voice is consistently going through the Z sound. So zzz. It doesn't also, let's just also be clear, it doesn't start with a D, so it's not a zzz, it's very much a zzz. Now, what can happen within the Brazilian pronunciation, it can be a little bit more of an SZ. Zzz. So, I will say how we use the Z in the English pronunciation first. Zoo, because, design, lose. Okay, so those Zs are quite strong. What you may hear with Brazilian pronunciation is something like this. Zoo, su, su, design, 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 because, or lose, lose, lose. Yeah, so the sound is kind of being pulled back off the Z and it almost becomes an S quality. Be very, very careful. Make sure that the Z, you're really putting voice through that Z sound, okay? Finally, let's look at some of the words that you might change the final sounds in. For example, the J sound in the end of stage. It could easily turn into stage. Stage. So what you're doing is almost creating a zh sound. Be careful, make sure it's still quite strong at j, stage. Or even high, high, high. Be careful, high. Okay. I've also heard when there's a final T sound, it can also be like twent. Is it twent, twench, twench? Twench. So just be very, very careful. Keep those final sounds very, very clear. Be very mindful as a final note of when you see certain sounds that are definitely voiceless, excuse me, like just air, p, t, k, that you're not changing them into a b, a d, or a g. So you're not putting voice into them. So when you're saying something like pin, you're not saying bin, yeah, or cap. Or for cap, you're not saying cab. Yeah? Be very, very careful on those final sounds that you're not interchanging. There's way more on this, and if you want to know more, by all means, talk to us here at the London School of English with the Voice and Accent Training Department. We'll be more than happy to help you. Come look at the website or contact us directly. Thanks.